For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.
Welcome in again, everybody, to the Terry Bowden Show on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ronnie Sanders, and today we are joined by a special guest, former Arkansas coach and Ole Miss coach, Houston Nutt. So we've got a new coach at Ole Miss, we got a new coach at Arkansas, we have a new coach at Auburn. A lot to talk about today.
Houston, good to see you, Houston. And a new coach at Oklahoma State, because I know Coach has some ties to Oklahoma State as well. But I guess it's funny because it should be about football, playing with the conference championships coming up and the postseason right after that. But all the talk is of coaching changes and who's going where. I mean, and you and I are about the same age and yes, coached much of the same time in our lives. But does it seem different now? Is it more? Are they firing more coaches, or is it just that we are so much more aware of it and talking about it?
I think they're firing a little bit more coaches right now, and it seems like a lot quicker too, guys. When you look around, there's firings in September, there's firings in October, and I've had a lot of people ask me the last few weeks, Coach, what is the advantage of firing a coach in September? And I said, well, that's a real good question. I don't know if there's really a good advantage or not, but it's telling one or two things. One, it's telling your fans, I guess the AD's getting so much pressure, Terry, as you know, and Ronnie, they get so much pressure. They feel like we got to give our fans hope. So they feel like they can give them hope by firing the guy. So you fire the coach. And then just like when you look at Arkansas, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, you look at all the landscape of this thing. It's about all we talked about for a whole week, guys, was Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, he had the world on hold. Where is Lane going? And, as soon as he said, well, we got to wait till after the Egg Bowl. We're going to wait till after the Egg Bowl. It kind of gave you well, you're probably not going to be at Ole Miss if you're going to wait after the Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
But, boy, I tell you what I hate, though. And I had so much respect for your father. Yeah. And he was always, I got to play some golf with him on a couple of places, a charity golf, FCA. Yeah. And I never will forget, since we're talking about firings, Ronnie, I'm going to throw this in. So I had the privilege of riding the cart with him, and he said, hey, Houston, I really love watching your teams play, and man, they play hard, and boy, you did a good job. And I said to him, Terry, I said, yeah, I just didn't go out the right way. He stopped that cart. And he said, hey, young fella, you see that stadium right over there? I got my name over there on that. I didn't go out the right way. And I tell you what, Terry, it woke me up because, we don't get the dismount that we want. And here I'm thinking, I'm riding around with a legend, with one of the best that's ever done it. And here I am thinking, I didn't go out the right way. And he put me in my place real quick. So well, it's a different world. It's just a different world with the way things are.
It is, and I think firings are more immediate. I think their demandings are for instant success. I guess when you get these new contracts that are so big, and sometimes I have to ponder. I said, "Holy cow! I was born too early," But it's like you can't act like you don't know what's going on when you sign these contracts. That they're going to expect you to immediately turn the program around, or they're going to expect to replace you if you don't, or you have a bad year, not 3 or 4 bad years. And then, of course, you see a couple of teams that jump into the NIL, and they do turn their program around very quickly. So I think there is a definite sense that there's an immediacy in what they expect. And like you said, because I know you were the Eddie Robinson Award winner when you were in the FCS and 3 times SEC Coach of the Year and a National Football Coach of the Year in 99. I don't know if you remember this, but in 99, you were in the Cotton Bowl against Texas, I believe. And me and Brad Sham did the broadcast. I was in the booth for the first time ever. Yeah. They always did a radio broadcast of the Cotton Bowl as well as the television because I was working for ABC, but I got to do that game after the regular season on radio with Brad. But that was the game I don't know if I'm sure you remember, knocked off Texas, and they got minus yardage rushing. It was a big win for Arkansas that day.
That was a great day for us. we had won a game in a bowl game in about 15 years.
Yeah.
And Coach, I was so nervous all week. You had Daryl Royal and Frank Royal as legendary captains. They're walking the hotels all week, and they're on the game. They're there before the on the coin toss, and you guys were there. And I think, my goodness, man, that thing, because we're raised up in the old Southwest Conference days.
Right.
So that Arkansas Texas game was really. It meant a lot to me. It wasn't much sleep the night before because, you wanted to please so bad. So it worked out pretty good for us that day.
Yeah, that was a big game. It's funny. I live in Monroe, Louisiana still because that's where I did my last coaching. And my wife and I live here. And shoot, there are a lot of our fans are all Arkansas fans. In fact, I go to Sunday school with a guy named Danny Crawford. You probably don't know him. He played defensive tackle for Arkansas probably 5 years before you got there. But a lot of Arkansas Razorbacks in Northeast Louisiana that go to school across the state line up there. But that's a big game. Texas-Arkansas is a big – and Texas-LSU, it's just a great old rivalries, but especially Texas A&M and Texas were the rivals of Arkansas.
No doubt about it. Everybody got real excited about Texas, and I said, how come y'all don't get more excited about Texas Tech or TCU when we played them? But no, it was Texas. You had to beat Texas. But, man, as a freshman, when I played at Arkansas, I noticed Earl Campbell coming down the sideline, and I said, boy, I tell you what, I'm in real football now, man. I'm in college football. This man was running over us, and what an athlete. It woke me up, about recruiting and, all these great coaches that patrolled the sidelines. I learned so much from those guys. So it was just, that was a great day.
And you mentioned Frank Broyles, one of the great coaches, and I've always admired and loved following the great coaches. We would go to those Nike trips, and I'd listen to Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno and the coach at BYU. Why has I forgotten his name? Coach LaVell Edwards. They were just to listen to those guys. And the sad thing is, like you mentioned, I can remember the day my dad called me because I had a law degree and my sister. Terry, they just fired me. I said, holy cow, Dad, they can't fire. Terry, they just fired me. And I think the reality is if you coach long enough in this business, you're going to get a new AD or you're going to get some situation where there's just going to be a change. And I guess that's just something we have to accept. I want to ask you, Lane Kiffin's situation. I sit there and I've watched it. And I always thought he'd go to Florida. He always reminded me of Coach Spurrier. He always had some ties to John Reeves and the Florida thing. I said, boy, he's a perfect fit, that cocky, confident type of cockiness that he just fits in down there at Florida. But could he have handled that better, or Ole Miss have handled that better? I don't know that I've got to the point where I feel like I can say what I want to say because I've been fired and I've been quitting. Ole Miss and, Arkansas and Ole Miss situation.
Terry, I do. I think it could be handled much better. And that's where I think, somebody's got to get in a room because I know there's some smart enough people to get in a room. And since we're going down this road of we're basically NFL, it's an NFL free agent semi-pro league, when I look at the Ole Miss deal, remember, Ole Miss had 4 starters returning. So that meant Lane Kiffin had some boosters that went out and helped him get about 18 starters. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And they also helped him get from FAU, that other Florida, a little small. They helped him get from Florida Atlantic back into the big show of the SEC.
Right.
And to think about all that week, the players, and I hear this, here's what the conversation that bothers me. Well, Ole Miss may not be able to get in the playoffs now because they lost their coach. Now, wait a minute.
Yeah.
These players deserve to be in that playoff. And I just think it could have been handled so much better. And then I kind of like what the AD, Keith Carter, I like what he did. He said, no, you can't coach our team. Although I know he wanted to coach it. Right. And it's one thing, Coach, I know you want to go to LSU, I get it. But my point is, for 7 to 8 days, all we heard is, what's going to happen? When are you going to make a decision? I'm going to make a decision after the Egg Bowl. Just prolong. And it's got to be some rules to me. And it's to me, let's wait till after the season before we can talk to coaches. But then all of a sudden, I know the next thing's going to be, well, wait a minute. The portal opens this week.
Right.
So how are we going to do that? We got to have our coach. So you got all these things to me that are running into each other. There's got to be some guardrails and some new rules. And I just think it could be handled better. And again, like I said, I'm not for, hey, somebody wants to go to another school. I get it. I understand it. But the way it was handled, and now you're going to punish a team. There's the rumor of, Terry, and I like to hear what y'all think, Ronnie. I mean, now the rumors, Ole Miss may not get in, and they maybe had the best team they've ever had since 1960.
Here's my question: If you're a coach and you've coached you've been there 6 years, and like you say, they pulled him out of FAU, and you've done a great job, and I understand he wants to take another job, but how do you walk out on your team? Like,
right.
I understand that, okay, LSU's a better job. Great. Florida's a better job. Auburn's a better job. But, okay, this isn't the time. I mean.
That's exactly right, Ronnie. Exactly right. I agree 1,000%. It's not the time. Yeah. And it's just not a good look. And I just hate, there's a lot of things right now that I've got my popcorn and Coke on the sideline and I'm watching. And, hey, how about this, Terry? Texas Tech may have the best team in the country.
Absolutely.
We're talking about Indiana. We're not talking about basketball. We're talking about Indiana football. And it just shows you, what does that mean? If you got the money and the resources, you got a chance to go. You get you a good coach, you got you a chance to go to the dance. And so it's just a whole different world right now, boy.
Right. You think of all those schools, and I was talking to someone today, those schools that spent millions on a 100,000 seat stadium or the #1 weight room in the country or the best cafeteria, and the players don't even look at it. They want to see what's going in my pocket. And unfortunately, the coaches are doing the same thing to a degree. And so it's somewhere along the line, you just feel like there's got to be an exit. I just don't know if there's an exit strategy from the NCAA of how high it can get. Somewhere along the line, I just think a school's got to say, you know what, why don't you go on? I think we're a great program. We've always been a great program. We're going to get a young program from like a Murray State or something, or like a Sanford where I came from. Yeah. And we're going to help that guy, and he's going to help us. And I don't know, somewhere along the line, there's got to be a little bit of a slowdown on some point, but I don't know where that's going to be. Tell me about the new coach of Oklahoma State. Do you like the pick they got? Because I know you left Arkansas and you ended up going to Oklahoma State and worked with Jimmy Johnson while he was there. One of the great years of Barry Sanders and Thurman Munson, all those late players.
Jimmy Johnson, Pat Jones, Dave Warnstedt, Tony Wise, all those guys were there. And had a great run, of course, with Hartley Dykes and Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, all those guys. I've never met Coach Morris in North Texas, just watched his team play. Really like what they do, really love the way how hard they play. And it's probably a really good pick, especially, Oklahoma, state's not big enough for them to sign 25. And so they've got to have Texas. And so the good thing about Coach Morris, he's been right there in that state of Texas. That should help him, especially in North Texas. So North Texas, East Texas, as you know, Terry, you can go turn over some rocks. Texas is going to get theirs. Right. Texas A&M is going to get theirs. But the good thing about the state of Texas, even Arkansas, even little bitty Arkansas, we could go down there and get second and thirds. And guess what? You do the right evaluation, all of a sudden, that second and third star, of course, we didn't ever worry about stars, but that second, third star, all of a sudden, by the time he was a sophomore, junior, after some development, all of a sudden, he's a difference maker, So I think that's going to be a good fit.
Yeah. How about Arkansas? Silverstein, I think he did a great job at Memphis. Looks like from a standpoint, I remember I watched the game when Memphis played Arkansas. Of course, that was a nice audition for that coach there, but it seems to be a good solid. I like the fact that it seems like everybody goes after the existing Power 4 coach that's already got a record, but if you do your homework, there's some great coaches that are on the verge, just need that first opportunity at the Power 4 level that are winning big. And Auburn did the same thing going to South Florida and getting their head coach.
That's exactly right. Coach Silverfield, he was down 18 points versus Arkansas, down 18, and just stuck to his knit. And I tell you, one thing that was really impressive, when you watch Memphis's defense, man, they fly to the ball now. I thought they did a really good job of Talon Green, the quarterback for Arkansas, is really a dual athlete that can fly.
Right.
And he can run 4.4. I really thought they did a really good job of keeping him bottled up and really running him and making him make some difficult throws. They turned it over twice. And then, of course, they got that very crucial fumble there at the end when they're just trying to run out the clock and kick a field goal to win the game. And, boy, Memphis just you got to give Coach Silverfield and their staff a great deal of credit. So I think he's a good one. You know, some of the fans, you know, they're always wanting the next John Gruden or the big splash.
Right.
But as you said, Terry, these guys have laps around the track. They've worked hard, and they've done it at a lower level, and they're hungry and ready to go.
Yeah, they sure have. And I just feel like, you know, I watched almost all the Arkansas games as part of my job in covering most of the SEC and ACC each week. But what a great offense. They just seemed snake bitten, lost some close games. I like Sam Pittman. I wish it could have worked out. They came so close, and every time they played, you knew they were going to put a lot of points on the board and make it close. But hopefully the new coach, they can get some deep. You know, when you start recruiting, you better understand, you better get this like Texas Tech did. They went out and got the best defensive line in the country probably. And so you got to start, I guess, when you start NIL, you better be careful not going on one side of the ball too much, because it's that defense that's probably going to get you through the postseason or to the end of the season.
Boy, you're so right. You're so right. You know, what'd be interesting, Terry, is now I feel a little bit for these high school kids and these coaches. You talked about that window that's shortened. And so now it's so easy, so quick to say, hey, let's go jump in this portal and let's get an older player, you know. And I've had a lot of high school senior dads when I lived down there in Fairview next to McKinney, Texas, and they would hit me with, well, my son's not getting looked at. You know, he did this, he did that. And they could not, I could see it the last couple of years, the trend of a lot of these teams are going to that portal to get the older players because they don't feel like they have time to develop this guy 2 years, because as you mentioned, that window now, we don't get 5 years to see how they grow up and all that anymore. You got to win almost yesterday. There's about a 2-year window now. You better make some things happen.
Yeah, and I think we could have figured, when I say we, I'm talking about us older guys that left the profession about the time that the NIL and the portal came in. I think we would have figured out, like we figured out so many other things over the transition of coaching. But Florida State, for example, is an example. And I like Mike Norvell. I like him. He seems to be a good fit. But they went all in totally for the portal. And if you have a couple of losses or your season begins to go south, they lack the loyalty. So I think the key will be the coach to figure out how many high school athletes can I get that love this university, that love the fight song, that love the color, that think we got the best band, that meet their wife there, that base of players, and then fill in with the portal. Because you go too much one way, as soon as it goes south, they all say, I'm leaving, you know, and that's a problem that Mike Norvell's dealt with at Florida State. He's got a chance to overcome it, and God bless his agent who got him a contract that saved his job. But he's got to figure that out if he has enough time now.
Well, Coach, I think you hit on something that's really important right there. That is so important to have that guy that has that blueprint, to have that mixture, because you hit on something. I see it all the time. I still speak to teams.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, when you lose early on, there's a sense of, I've had a lot of conversations with coaches. Well, there's a sense of, like you said, that loyalty factor. Right. You know, that off season, and he probably doesn't know that fight song, you know, because the two words that they're used to, they're at the end of every relationship right now is how much, how much you gonna pay me. And so when you do lose, boy, you better have a group of seniors, a group of leaders in that locker room that's gonna hang on and keep fighting. And so, boy, I think you're so right. Boy, that mixture, that balance of getting that team in there between young, old, and a mixture of groups, especially to go all out, as you said, and get all portals. Watch out.
I tell you another thing too, and of course and you and I both coached at different schools where you have to learn to start again and build a program from the beginning. But getting a coaching staff is not always an easy thing too, because how many do you retain? How many do you bring of your own? If you come from a G5 level school, do you have you're hired to hire the best guys you can afford, and so you got to be careful. You can't bring everybody, but you got to bring the right ones, and then you got to keep some, maybe one or two, to keep the continuity going. And then, as my dad always says, the most important thing on the staff is loyalty. You better get people who are loyal. I always tell my coach, you can want any job in the country except one. You can't want mine. And because I said that's mine, and I don't plan on leaving anywhere. And so, but loyalty and staffing is going to be important. Some of these new coaches, and I always thought that's one of the most important things. Do they know how to staff? Can they put together that staff? Because the staff will make you or break you.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And some of these guys, when I talk to them one-on-one, what's your goals? What do you want to do? Hey, I want to be a head coach. I said, well, that's great. Well, go be the best receiver coach in America. That's what we're paying you for right now, to be the best offensive line coach in America, or defensive back coach, whatever it may be. And you said it so well. Don't worry about this job. You worry about getting your group of 10 players, getting them to play at a very high level. But that thing, it's tough. And then I always thought it was tough in that transition when you go to another school, because, there's always those few boosters that would give you those names. This is the guy you got to keep. This is the guy you got to keep. You always get this advice, and so you got to filter all that out and get the best group of guys that will get in that foxhole with you.
That's right. It's funny. We had a Christmas decorations at church last night, and our assistant pastor kind of got that shadow beard. You see on the sideline, those coordinators, they all look the same. They got that square jaw. They got that shadow on their face, and they all have that I want to be a head coach look. And I put my arm around my preacher. I said, preacher, look at your assistant. He's got that coach in waiting look at his face. You better be careful. He got that coach because every time I look on the sideline, it's almost like, who's got that perfect look, and ready for the next job. Well, you better be good at what you do, or you're not going to be out there available for that next job.
Your dad, Frank Broyles, some of these guys, they'd be upset with some of the dress code that's going on the sidelines. Ronnie, if you notice some of these cutoff sleeves and some of the Bill Belichick type stuff, they got those 6-day-old. Frank Broyles was a button up. He liked clean and clean.
Yeah. Take a look at the Dolphins coach.
He would tell me sometimes, there's a couple of your coaches that need to clean up a little bit better for these recruiting weekends, And I said, yes, sir. We'll get that taken care of, coach.
Well, when I went to Auburn, I was young. I was 36 years old. I was young, and I don't care if my dad was a head coach. I was nervous as could be. But Suge Jordan wore a shirt and tie. Pat Dye wore a shirt and tie. So I wore a shirt and tie just out of respect for what they wore. We were all moving away from that. My dad moved away from that. But I just felt like being a young guy at a school with tradition, that would be respectful of the way they used to do it. And of course, we started winning, and I couldn't change shirt and tie. I had to stay with it the whole time as far as that sideline. But
what year was it when you went 15-0?
Well, I went undefeated my first year in '93, but we were on probation, and then we won the first. We went to 20. We won the first 9 my second year before we ever tied. That was back we tied Georgia, but we won our first 20 straight. And I should have lost early and won late. I made the mistake of winning too much early.
You and I on the same page on that one. One real good the first couple of years at Ole Miss, and Ann Orgeron left me some good players. They didn't know how to win, but he left me some good players. But those last 2 signing classes wasn't very good. We had all freshmen, but it's how it works sometimes. It's just it's a tough gig.
Yeah,
what do you make of all the movement? I mean, last year we had no jobs in the SEC. This year you've got 5 open, and there's going to be some. I've been saying all along, there's going to be some strange hires. Guys get jobs because the cycles move so quickly. There's just not a lot of proven guys, and so I think you're starting to see that.
Boy, I know it. Every year, the first press conference, I never forget the SEC. Our guys would say, they'd always talk about the hot seat. Who's on the hot seat? And I said, guys, look, every day you might as well say, hey, I'm on the hot seat. There's a lot of them, except maybe Nick Saban, who's not on the hot seat, but everybody else is on the hot seat because you better win. And Frank Broyles was great because he was so honest. He said, we pay you a lot of money, and I love the way your players graduate. I love they're involved in the community, but remember, I pay you to win. And so he was so honest and direct. And hey, I knew where I stood, and he was right. But Ronnie, getting back to your question, that's what makes it hard. It seems like every year there's 2 to 3. There's going to be 2 or 3 changes every year in the SEC because everybody wants to win. Like yesterday, they want to win. Boosters want to win. All these people want to win. And a lot of them, winning is different. 8 wins, that ain't good enough. There's some programs that you got to be in the hunt. You got to be in the championship of the SEC. So there's a lot of different levels. And as you say, there's some coaches, and that's where it goes back to what Terry's saying, where the Silverfields, the Golesh, those level of coaches will be given a chance if they got a good track record, because as you said, there's just not that number of coaches out there that are ready to go.
Yeah, you gotta just win where we are. Well, before we get going, I want to sit there. You've kind of watched the football field as they play this year. I've watched it as well. Give me 2 or 3 people that you think will do well in the post. How do you think the postseason will go? Do you have a team or 2 that you think can go all the way? And why would they go all the way?
Okay. Terry, I tell you what, I've watched this Indiana team. I watched them go to Oregon. I've watched them play when they were behind, when adversity's hitting. I love this Mendoza kid, and I love how hard and how physical Indiana is. And I can't believe I'm saying watch out for Indiana. I think they're sound, man. I think they're sound I keep looking for flaws. I don't see it. I can't wait for this Ohio State, because Ohio State looks like to me they got probably the most depth. When you look at the depth of D linemen, O linemen, you look at the speed, the receivers out of this world. Jeremiah Smith looks like the quarterback saying he knows how to protect the ball, get him out of the wrong play, get him in the right play. I can't wait for that game because Indiana's going to be in this tournament, and I'm anxious to see where they land. I think they'll be good. The other 2 I want to talk about right now.
Yeah.
I want you to look at Texas these last few weeks. This little Arch Manning now has grown up a little bit. He's gotten comfortable, and they're playing better on defense. And so I don't know if Texas can get in, but how about Vanderbilt? This quarterback, Pavia, this guy, again, we're talking about a Vanderbilt, really probably should be in this thing. I don't know if they can get in. But they're fun. They are fun to watch. They can run. They'll hit you. They're physical. I think Coach Lee's done a great job. Excuse me. But Oregon's another one. You got speed. They're quick. I love Coach Lanning's attitude. He was a Broyles Award finalist. I got to meet him a couple of years back. I like the way he's engaged, Terry, with his players. Players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. But one thing I've seen with him, those players know that he cares, and they'll run through a wall for him now. They'll go fight for him. So I got my eye on Oregon, Ohio State, but the Indiana to me is the surprise of the surprise, because I think his quarterback is special.
It's funny you mentioned Indiana. People didn't know Kurt Cignetti. When my father was the head coach at West Virginia, I was a walk-on when we started. His offensive coordinator was Frank Cignetti. Frank Cignetti was Kurt's dad. And Frank was kind of a genius offensive coordinator. He was unbelievably knowledgeable. We nicknamed him Frank Clicknetti because he ran that projector back and forth so many times you could never leave a meeting because but that's the kind of thing. Kurt was raised there with us, about 5 years younger than me, but he's kind of like his dad. I'll tell you a funny story. They beat William and Mary and Lou. My dad was kind of close to old Lou. Lou's different. Not everybody got along with old Lou, but my dad and him were close. And my dad beat him at William and Mary real bad. And Lou got mad, said, "Why'd you run the score up?" He said, "Lou, it's not my job to keep the score down. It's your job to keep the score down." Now, he said that as a joke, but Frank Cignetti was probably out there because that's the way Kurt goes. He don't care about the score. It's going to be as much as he can score, and that goes back to, I think, just that's your object. That's what my dad said. Terry, don't worry about whether you run it or score as many points as you can score, and that'll help your defense more than anything. Right. When it comes to that, but Indiana isn't it? And I'm gonna throw Georgia. I think Georgia is trending. Yeah. And Texas, like you, they rushed for 217 yards. They hadn't been running well. They ran well, and all of a sudden, when they began to run well, the quarterback became a better quarterback. It was amazing how that works together, where he's throwing under less difficult situations. But I like those, and it's going to be it'll be interesting. I love the playoffs. I guess I came from I coached Division III, Division II, Division I AA, and we had playoffs, and so and so I like the fact that it has made that makes last weekend was incredibly important to us. A lot of football teams that it wouldn't have been important to.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm like you. I like the playoffs as well. Murray State gave me my first taste of it. Yeah. And boy, there's a few teams that I had. I know you had too. That I think, boy, if we had that 12 team, I'd be in that playoff. Yeah. See what would happen. I missed that. Like you said, we missed a couple things. We missed the playoffs and we missed that pay window. But other than that, the thing you miss the most is the relationships. Yeah. With these players, man, you miss it. And it's going to be a fun time to see how this. I'm really anxious, Terry, Ronnie. What do y'all think? I'm really curious to see how they do this thing Tuesday night with what's all happened, especially with the Ole Miss scenario. Right. I'm real curious because I don't think they should punish them because of the change of coach. So I've got my eyes setting, my recorder setting on this one. I'm going to see what these guys do on this one.
Yeah, I think it'd be a bad standard to set. If they were to do that, I think they would set a bad standard for what they might do in the future, because I don't believe that's such a disrespectful of the players that did so much for that program and the university that, like you said, brought Lane Kiffin in, that gave him what he needed to be successful. And I live in Louisiana. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, because he going to have, if he don't eat crawfish now, he's going to be eating crawfish pretty soon. I'm going to tell you right now, because that's all they eat here. I eat crawfish all summer and fall, it seems like, now that I moved down here.
I love it. That's right.
Houston, before we let you go, when did Ole Miss and Missouri and Vandy swap places with Auburn and Florida?
Boy, I tell you what, Ronnie, that's what I was saying at the first of the show. It's just hard to believe, but times have changed, and I'm sitting there thinking, boy, I'd like to play Auburn back in my day right now. I don't remember them being like that on offense, because they've always had LSU, same thing on offense. I always remember having that big Kevin Falk or those big time receivers. How about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase? I don't see those guys. So it's just a matter of time. I think they'll come back. That's the one thing about these programs. It will come back. Right. But again, now with the added scenario to it, though, the little bitty thing there at the end is now your boosters have got to get involved in this NIL, because it's been proven by Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. I mean, Texas Tech is scoring points, guys, and I'm anxious to see how they'll do. And it just seems like to me, their defense can run. I mean, but how does this come about? Well, it's come about because people are paying money.
Right, exactly.
And so they bought them a team, and so it's just those alumni and boosters. If you want a team, they got to get involved.
Well, I'm with you. Diego Pavia, to me, he would be the hands down Heisman winner to me this year. I don't know that Mendoza probably will, or saying at Ohio State, because their teams are undefeated. But no quarterback this year anywhere has made the impact on college football on a team. First 10-win season in school history, regular season in school history. And when I watched him, every game you watch him, it's amazing that he makes very good teams not look as good on defense. So again, I love Diego Pavia. I don't know that he'll win it because it's a popularity contest, and I'm not sure enough voters up north really want to watch Vanderbilt. But he has been an incredible quarterback.
He has, Terry, and I tell you, I've been in Knoxville. I've been in that Coliseum. That thing's rocking. And for him to go to Knoxville, and he's got ice water in his veins.
Absolutely.
And you said it. You said he put the team on his back, and he beat them. He beat Tennessee in a hostile environment. I got a lot of respect for Vanderbilt and Pavia.
Well, Houston, we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it, guys.
Great fun. I enjoyed it. Best wishes to you, and hope to see you somewhere down the road.
You bet. Y'all take care, guys.
Take care. I don't mind being labeled old school when you associated with the Houston Nutt and the people like that who and you've got to go back. And he had a football family. Dad was a high school coach and a basketball player at Ole Miss years ago. His brother's a coach. His other brother's in athletics. A football family. I think the rest of them probably still coaching or ADN or administrative. But it's a great football family and a great tradition that he has had. And you got to go back. He and I are getting old, and a lot of people don't have any idea that we actually won a few games back in the day, but he sure did. And 3 SEC champion, 3 SEC Coach of the Year awards, National Coach of the Year at 1AA, National Coach of the Year at 1A. And Arkansas and Ole Miss were the schools that he kind of worked around during his time in the SEC and did a great job. And Frank Broyles, one of the great coaches. The Darrell Royal, Frank Broyles, they went along with Johnny Vaught and Bear Bryant, Wally Butt, some of the old coaches that will go back in the SEC history that were legends in our profession.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's going to be, you talk about back in the good old days. It's a different world. I mean, I don't remember a time where Auburn would have hired a guy who was born in Russia, went to Ohio State, and has spent his entire, outside of the last 6 years, he'd never coached in the South. And if you count Florida as the South, it's, it's a different animal. It's going to be interesting to see how he does.
Yeah, and that's what we'll probably get to now a little bit is the new coach, the new hire at Auburn. And I don't know that precedes the game against Alabama, but we'll put that one off till we get through talking about the new coach because there are no moral victories and there are no close losses against Alabama, but it was you have to walk away from Auburn feeling kind of proud of how hard they played under different coaches and how well they played. And I'm gonna have to take my hat off to the coach at Alabama. I don't know if I would. He went for it on 4th and 2.
Yeah.
Now they kick a field goal and I don't think it was a good call. But it worked out. And I'm thinking, why are you doing that? You got 3 minutes left in the game. They haven't scored a whole lot of points. At the best, they might kick a field goal and tie it up. But if you go up, at least you're winning the game. But if he don't make that, I guess he figured they could hold him there and go to overtime anyway. Maybe I don't know. But anyway, I would have. I don't know that many coaches, but he did it to make a statement that he felt like they could do it, and it worked. And it forced Auburn to go down and have to score a touchdown, and they were on their way until that fumble. But anyway, we'll get to that after we get to the new head coach. And you mentioned it, Auburn hiring a coach from Russia, and he's not even from above the Mason-Dixon line. He's from Russia. But boy, has he done a good job. And I've tried to look at all of his background and what the possibilities are. And I think a pretty good hire. I think based on what's available, coaches that have kind of put themselves in a position to show what they can do. The more I've gone back, and I've watched a lot of his football this year at South Florida, I think they've got a coach that is on the verge of making big things happen at the Power 4 level.
Well, Cohen said when he fired Freeze that he wanted somebody with an edge. And he hired the exact opposite of Freeze. If you watch him and you see I'm not sure if you watched the video of him and Tom Herman 2 years ago. It was post game. He's certainly got an edge. And I knew somebody who worked with him at Central Florida, and he was not a fan. And so I started doing some digging around yesterday, and the more I dug around, the words, the things that I heard people describe him, brash, arrogant, detailed, smart, hardworking, but he's certainly got an edge. The brashness, the arrogance. That's typically not tied to Auburn, but it's a new day.
Well, again, I guess when I spoke, I did not speak in regard to his person. I don't know him. I don't know of that one-to-one basis where of arrogance, cockiness, confidence, whatever you call it. I'm speaking strictly about where he's coached, what he's done since he's gotten to where he's gone, and how he's done it, and who has taught him, and where he comes from. and from a football standpoint, and then I look at his overall team stats and what they do offensively and how they have done it. He has done a remarkable job at South Florida. They were not a team that had any good football before he got there for the previous 2 or 3 years when he went there. Now, I think one of his early jobs, he was a graduate assistant at Ohio State, Northern Illinois, which is kind of because he was in Dublin, Ohio, where at a very good high school. Because I coached at Akron for 7 years. I think I recruited at most of the schools there. But then his first full-time job was at Toledo. Tim Beckman was the head coach, and Tim went to Illinois and took him to Illinois. But there was also a coach on that staff, Matt Campbell, because I coached against them when he was there. I coached against his teams at Toledo when I was at Akron. He was with Tim Beckman. Beckman went to Illinois, took him with him there. Then Matt Campbell got the head job at Iowa State and took him there. Now, those guys aren't wide open offensive people now.
No.
Fundamental football, run the football, good, balanced offense, play defense, Midwest football. So that was his background. And then he goes to UCF. I don't know if he maybe had a job in between that. I don't know, but he ended up being at UCF with Josh Heupel.
He was there for a year, and then
that's where he got his introduction to a up-tempo, fast-paced. And then when Josh got the head job at Tennessee, he went there with him also. And I think that was the year they had that great offense. 21, I think, was that fabulous offense they had with Herndon Hooker at quarterback and all those receivers. I want to say that was. But he began to understand up-tempo, run game, vertical passing games, spread your splits out as a wide receivers, and understood and was part of an offense that's very, very explosive. And a lot of people have come from that offensive style. And that's where he left there and took the USF job. And I think I'm right in saying they left Tennessee and got the USF job that was not – they had 3 losing seasons, I want to say.
I think they won 4 games the previous 2 or 3 years. I mean,
and then he goes 7-6, wins the bowl, 7-6 and win the bowl. Then this year, 9-3, and going to a bowl. And then they just statistically, offensively, they just ate it up. They just tore it up. And the quarterback there, if you've watched them play much, was fabulous. Their statistics, their scoring ability, they scored against everybody except, they beat Florida 18-16, but they were able to do a lot offensively. And it's a balanced offense. It's a balanced offense. They had, they had 217 first downs running the ball, 217 first downs throwing the football. Average 270, I think it was 270 yards passing, 221 rushing. So it's a balanced offense, and they're about 50% on third downs. So offensively, and I say all this stuff offensively because I believe DJ Durkin has agreed to stay. Is that too early? Am I premature on that?
They were meeting last night, and I think this morning. So I'm not sure.
Well, and I'm sure they would. I'm sure Auburn would want him to stay. I will say this: you've got to give the head coach the ability to make his own mind up. But I'm thinking, and I did this when I went to Auburn. I was an offensive play caller. I called the offense. I ran the offense. I needed to have a defensive coordinator, and Wayne Hall was already there, and they had good defense. And I have that old philosophy: if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like we could maintain some continuity on defense, and I could get an offensive staff and surround myself with offensive people that believed in what I was doing. And, of course, Tommy Bowden was I retained Tommy because he had run the exact same offense. Rick Trickett was a fellow that was close to us that we knew from way back at West Virginia. He was one of the younger then, but tougher offensive line coaches. And Rodney Allison, who worked with Tommy earlier from Texas Tech. If you remember Rodney Allison, a hard-nosed running back coach. But the big thing was I said, you know what? Thank goodness we were able to retain Joe Witt and Wayne Hall on that defense. Rodney Garner was a graduate assistant. I made him a full-time assistant, and I coached tight ends and be the recruiting coordinator. And then we had to bring it. Then you want to bring in what you can. Now, when you're at South Florida, and all those coaches help you get to where you now are, you want to reward them. But Auburn pays you to hire the best coaches in America, and they're going to pay him to hire the best coaches in America. So, unfortunately, just like when I was at Samford, he can't bring them all with him. He'll probably bring some of the ones that did the best job or fit the situation. But the sad thing is you can't bring them all with you. And that's what happens. And when I left Sanford and came to Auburn, it was clear I had to bring some and leave some. I brought Jimbo Fisher, brought Jack Hines and Jimbo Fisher with me from Sanford, and Todd Stroud, who was our strength coach from Sanford. But we were able to mix new coaches with coaches from the staff, and with other coaches that I had wanted to work with from earlier times to come in. That's where Gorsuch. Is it no Gorsuch? Yeah,
Golesh.
I want to say it. Golesh. Anyway, that's what he's going to have to do, is make sure he gets a good staff, because that's going to be very, very important. A lot of coaches you hire don't know how to hire a staff, and
there is no question. He's brought most of his offensive staff, I think, from USF. Brought Cody Burns, who was working with him. But I'll share some text messages from guys that I texted with last night. Went with Beck to Toledo in Illinois. Beck is an urban guy.
Yeah.
Big. Then he went to Iowa State with Campbell. Big influence. Influence there. He's very smart, articulate. Players like him. Very serious dude. Smart enough to have some swag and can be comedic, but make no mistake, in recruiting and coaching decisions, every I will be dotted and every T crossed. So,
that's kind of what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear. I think, I've always said cocky and confident and arrogant are two different things. Arrogant is a self appreciation of things you aren't qualified for. Arrogance is thinking you're good about things you really aren't qualified for. Confidence, cockiness, cocksurety, whatever you want to call it, is something that's based on fact, and I think he's done his homework. And I can see a guy like that you always picture a guy that his family got out of Russia when they could, and that he worked his way up from not having any background in college football till he came to America. But Dublin, Ohio, and is it Scotia, the school that he's, I forget the name of the high school, but it's a very, very, very good Ohio high school football. And you got to understand, in Ohio, football is very important. A high school in Ohio football is much older than it is in the South. We're talking about, Massillon, Canton, McKinley, some of the programs, but they're passionate about their football in Ohio, just as they are in the South. And so he was raised around it and worked with, like you mentioned, Tim Beckman, Matt Campbell. Guy I coached against him when he was at Toledo. I didn't know he was on the sideline, but he was on the sideline on those staffs when I coached against him. And then Josh Heupel. It's funny. I was already at ABC Sports. I left Auburn, went to ABC Sports, but my dad played Oklahoma in the national championship game, and I was able to watch that game. Well, I would broadcast it. Did the pregame and halftime. Josh Heupel was the quarterback of that championship game in 2000. 1999, my dad won it against Virginia Tech. 2000, he lost it against Oklahoma. So I think if he could keep Durkin, if that would, and I'm sure I would think if he looks at the situation, I can't say for sure, because I got to say Durkin may get offered. Durkin is going to have opportunities. Because
he may get a head coaching job. With all these.
And that'll always happen. If he can get a head job, that will always happen. And it will happen. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen just as well at Auburn as it will somewhere else without having to move. If they, in fact, want it. Now, to me, you want a coach that's very secure and very sure of himself, because they have no problem hiring a coach that everybody loved here before. If you're insecure or you worry too much, you won't hire a guy from the previous staff. You're afraid they've got too many inside friends that you don't have, because but I don't think that's the case. I think you got a good defensive coordinator, and I guarantee it. I don't care if he's an offensive play caller, he don't have time to sit in that staff room and defensive staff room other than to hear what the game plan is and give his point of view on a Thursday, not on a Saturday, too much, except on a critical timeout situation or go for it type of deal or things like that. But that will be interesting. But you say he's bringing his staff, most of his offensive staff, with him.
Yeah, it looked like last night he had. I believe we reported he's already hired, I think, 4 coaches. From South Florida. So, it's interesting that Cody Burns was, an Auburn alum, and he was already working with him. And so Cohen did a great job. Of course, I guess the deal was finally finalized Sunday morning. But he did a great job of keeping it quiet. And some are all backed out and went to Florida. But there's just going to be some crazy things happen. I mean, as many jobs as are going to be open. I mean, I've got my list here. I mean, and that's not even talking about, coordinator jobs, assistant coach jobs. I mean, it's going to be a wild year. And, yesterday my phone started ringing. I think I got home about 3:00 in the morning, fell asleep in a chair and went to bed about 7, and the phone started ringing about 7:15. So.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, and this, because I had Buddy Davidson, you remember Buddy with me?
Absolutely.
Is I don't know what I couldn't want to. I don't. You kind of like Brent Bledsoe, who's on the staff there. You need to have somebody there that knows the ropes, not the ropes about what's the background on this bad guy or the good guy. When you got to have something done, he knows how to get you across the campus. He knows how to get something from somebody. So you need to find somebody that's loyal to you, but also knows the program. And I know you, and I mentioned Brent because Brent was with us. He was there all the way since I was there, and has been loyal to Auburn through several programs. But be an ideal, and there would be other people as well. But
Buddy Davidson, you mentioned Buddy. He was the ultimate insider. Now, he'd been around forever.
He was there because I grew, when I got to Auburn, you got people to understand when you follow Pat Dye, there's a huge Pat Dye, but there was still a ton of Shug Jordan people that coached and worked with him. And so you had half of the people that you dealt with were from the Shug Jordan era, others from the Pat Dye era. And so you had a bunch of, and that Buddy Davidson was through all of that, and he was just to have him around. It just cut through the red tape a lot. He knew where to get things done or who to see when you had to go see somebody. And
there's some wisdom on that hall for a young guy. I mean, I remember in order. I think it was Jimbo, Rodney Allison, Trickett. We had Pete Jenkins and Brother Oliver and Buddy Davidson all in the same hall. I mean, that's a lot
of football knowledge there, a lot of football wealth, and but again, they. I like the possibilities. Here's what I would say to people. One, make sure he's an offensive coach. He's got an offensive resume that's really good, and it's a run and throw. I don't think if you're a great throwing guy, Riley at Southern Cal, that's not going to make people real happy at Auburn unless you remember to run that football. And I believe that's true. I think in the SEC toward the end of the year, if Alabama did anything better against Auburn, they ran the ball better than they had run the ball. Auburn just dominated the statistics. Dominated statistics in that football game, except 2 turnovers that Auburn had. Alabama had none, and a slow start. It was all a catch-up game, but still, statistically, the defense was dominant in that game, and offense caught fire after getting behind 17-0 in that game. But I do think if you look at the potential, I would say the first thing I would do is make sure, as the new coach, I think you've got your 2 quarterbacks that need to stay. I believe, Ashton Daniels 1 more year, and I think Deuce would stay too, knowing he's the coach of the quarterback of the future. Although you never know how that's going to work. They're going to go after everybody's going to go after and look at it, But I think I think those 2 could fit, But I think Ashton Daniels, you got to have the right one the first year, And I don't know that. My impression as kind of a analyst is that Ashton was more polished because he's been around. He's played more. He's older. He played a lot at Stanford. Deuce was just pure raw talent, pure raw talent. But I got a feeling if you watched USF's, I would if you're an Auburn fan and you want to get a feel for what you're looking at offensively, go look at highlight video. Go to a podcast or YouTube podcast and just pick a game out and look at the highlights, or say, I want to see offensive highlights. And you get a 15-minute video, and that'll give you an idea of what kind of offense I think you're going to have. Now, he brought in a quarterback, and the quarterback was outstanding. But I'm saying you give him a quarterback that he's got that could be dual threat. He had a dual threat quarterback there at USF. He'll want that dual threat quarterback. But I'd say if you got a great defensive coordinator, and DJ Durkin will be the first guy I think of, but don't think if DJ got a job somewhere and you couldn't keep him, I would think he knows that he's got to bring in a great defensive coordinator. And then 2, do you have a veteran quarterback or a quarterback that you can win with? And we see what happens when you don't. When you don't, you got problems. But when you do, you got chances. And I think Auburn's got 2 if they can. And I think Ashton right now is the most polished for one more year, but you got to look at the way it's going to go down the road for those 2 guys. And then my third thing is, do I have a kicker that's going to, because you're going to be a lot of play. If you're going to turn this thing around quickly, you're going to have to win close ball games. And your kicker is pretty accurate. I know he was sick and he overcame a lot of difficulties. And I think he's getting his length back, his distance back, but he is very accurate. I think he was 27 of 30, or he made all but 3 this year, did a pretty good job. But I think those are some quarterback and a kicker, and then a defensive coordinator, and then see what you got to fill in with the portal and all that. You can fill in pretty good, because I think in today's game, there's nothing that says you can't. I mean, when you're 5-7, almost 6-6, and going to a bowl, you're not far from there. And when Alabama's sitting there looking at a playoff team, statistically you played them, lights out. Just couldn't get the win in that football game.
Well, and the other thing is, I talked to a couple of guys at Oklahoma, and one thing that stood out to me was, I said, well, how good is Auburn? And they said, well, they're about like us. Well, we're pretty similar. And Oklahoma found a way to win 10 games, maybe more, and Auburn found a way to lose 7. And
that's a good point. I think Auburn was experiencing more quarterback difficulties early on. Right or wrong, but that's a fact and that things weren't clicking. Now you can, and I'm not going to jump all over you, but whatever was going on with him and the quarterback, and together that running the offense, it wasn't clicking. And see, at Oklahoma, it was clicking some. He got hurt, and they had to win completely with defense. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think Oklahoma can get through the postseason because I don't think they have enough offense. I don't think they're good enough. I think the quarterback is good, but he's not a true dual threat. He'll pick up some tough yardage, but he's not a true dual threat quarterback in my mind. And as I watched that game against Texas, I said, that doesn't scare people enough, when break, contain, and outrun people and make people miss and all those things. He's just a good. So now I'll say, and I hate to compliment Alabama, their quarterback looked more athletic than I thought he would be. He looked pretty dang athletic running the football, and credit to him. But I think Auburn's got the answer as well on that. But Oklahoma they won. You're right. They won with a defense that was very similar to Auburn's, and they may have been a little better. I don't know if they are, but they're pretty dang good,
And they lost. They had a bad year last year, the 5-7, I believe. So
yes. They had the same quarterback problem that we had this year. But again, I think we can see. I don't care where you are, if you can see what happens when you lose your quarterback. Texas Tech has a great football team. Houston talked about it. When they lost their quarterback one game, they lost Arizona State. I think they lost. Their quarterback got hurt, and they played their backup, and he's pretty good, but he's not as good as their starter. And they lost the football game, or they would be undefeated. Virginia lost a late game because Chandler Morris, Chad Morris's son, got hurt, couldn't play, and they lost that game. And they've won ever. Got him back, they won. And it's not like you don't have 2 quarterbacks, but your one is usually better than the 2, or he wouldn't be 1, and it's more limited what you do. And there's an old saying in football that if you got more than 1 quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. But that's not entirely true, because you do, but you might have 2 that are perfectly ready. You don't have 2 that are ready to go out there and win it all. And I think you could probably say that about most everybody, whether it be Indiana or Ohio State or whoever. You're going to be a little bit more limited if you lose that starter. And so I think you got to make sure you've got a quarterback there that can do that. So it should be pretty dang interested when it comes to what the Gorsuch's next moves. I saw a YouTube podcast, just a YouTube video of him flying into Auburn.
Yeah.
And it made me think of what he must feel. Because I remember coming from Sanford into Auburn and just being a part of that, and telling my brother Tommy, who was on my staff, I said, God, I got Tommy. Can you just cover for me? I gotta drive to Birmingham, get some things closed up. It's gonna take me, all day. And he said, what do you mean you got to drive to Birmingham? I said, well, yeah, I got to get back over there so I can get everything here done that I have, it done, not done there. He says, Terry, you don't drive. You got a plane. I said, what? He said, you got a plane. Now I said, oh, I do. Because although my dad was a head coach at Florida State, I had worked my way up, and I never had a plane. And I could get to Birmingham in about 20 minutes and be right back at Auburn. But as I looked at the new coach come in at Auburn, Auburn's changed a lot. They don't have one plane that's a King Air anymore. They've got some Citations and jets and a runway that'll land them. We had to, if we ever flew on a jet, we had to fly into Columbus. We couldn't fly into Auburn back then. It was not the runway wasn't long enough, and I can still remember recruiting nights when we'd come in at 12 or 1 o'clock from recruiting in Mississippi or Florida, and it was foggy, and we couldn't find the runway. We'd go real low, and because there's no hills, there's no mountains, so you can fly a little bit lower in the fog at Auburn, and we'd fly down low, and we'd see, there's a stadium, and we always knew if the stadium's there, we know that the airport must be over there, but we could never find it, and we would fly around a couple of times. I'm thinking, let's just go to Columbus, please. So let's just go to Columbus, and but it was kind of neat seeing the new coach come in. And I really thought Auburn would win Saturday night. I really did. There was such an enthusiasm at the last two games. Such an enthusiasm and excitement, and the players played like that. They played with incredible emotion, physical, and got after it. They really got after
really
it.
Did. And I saw something on Twitter last night, and it said that and I guess there's some truth in this, that no fan base in America gives more and gets less back than Auburn.
Well, in 5 years, that's 5 losing seasons. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if Kalen DeBoer thought he knew what it was like to play Auburn in Auburn, he didn't know till he was there, because it was you could see it on TV. It was intimidating. It was impressive. It was nonstop. And it was it was a factor in the football game. And I know Nick Saban says it's haunted, but in a way, that's a compliment in that it's a unique place, and you better be ready to face a lot of things. And they used to say that about LSU when you played LSU at night there, and that they were haunted. I think actually it was because they had a fan up in the stands that would blow a whistle every time there was a critical play, and they lied about it not being true, but that's true. We lost to them one time because somebody in that stands.
95 or 9, I forget.
It was 95, 93, 95, because that was when we were on the 1 yard line, and Pat Nix dropped back into the end zone to throw just a quick pass, and somebody blew a whistle in the end zone in the stands, and all the linemen stopped, and he got sacked. But the official said we didn't blow a whistle, and so and we lost the game like 13-9. We lost it like 13-9 or something like that.
That same night, the announcer, I guess Jared Gennardo was the coach, and they were getting, they were back to being pretty good. And I remember the announcer all night, Cecil Diesel, and the magic is back. The magic is back.
Well, they got the magic is it's not haunted. It's a whistle. But anyway, that was a great atmosphere at Auburn Saturday night. And but before we go, there's some other huge hires in the conference. Yeah. We hit the Lane Kiffin deal? Lane Kiffin is an outstanding coach. He's become an outstanding coach, whether he was or was not. There was something about him that made some pretty big programs hire him when he was real young, and he flopped on a lot of those. Oakland Raiders, Tennessee. He left. He went 7-6 and walked on them to go to Southern Cal, and that's not a great year. And then he walked, and then Southern Cal fired him. And then I think even Nick Saban fired him for getting too involved in the FAU job before the SEC championship or the playoffs. I don't remember if it was which one it was. I played against him, but I don't think I think Lane knew all along when he was leaving. I mean, looking at the situation, I felt like if he was staying, there was an earlier time to tell them he was staying. If he knew he was staying, and I think so. I think he knew he was leaving.
Well, he probably did. And, you look at the situation at USC. I mean, you mentioned I won't say it on the air, but a mutual friend of ours was out there, and I said, well, what do you think about Kiffin? He said, this is after he got fired at USC, and he said, he said if the guy's goal was to make everybody in the building, from the secretaries to the players to the coaches to the boosters to the AD, he said everybody in the building hated him, and so I don't that was not the case at Ole Miss, and I don't think it was.
Well, he was younger, and I'm going to give him some credit. I mean, younger, didn't know how to probably handle himself as well. But I'll say this: it got all the talk, because he did a documentary about how his life has changed and how Mississippi, Oxford made a difference in his life, and his family was better, the kid relationship, he was better, all these things were better, and all along I think he said, "Hey, heck with this, I'm bolting." And I think Houston said it, or we both felt it. Sometimes the best job comes around at the wrong time. And you just don't take it. Sometimes the best job out there doesn't come at the right time, so you don't take it, because there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things. And I just think that was the wrong way to do things. I think considering and I imagine wondering how he felt when he went to FAU. Would he ever get back in the big time again? I'll never get back in the big time again, or maybe it's over. I'm just going to do and then Ole Miss gave him a chance. And I think I heard that on somebody's podcast the other day. But regardless, he is at LSU, and I live amongst the LSU Tigers. There's other Tigers. So I've been to Auburn, where the real Tigers are, and I've been to Clemson coaching, where the real Death Valley is. Now, I won't say that. I think LSU had the Death Valley before Clemson did. But I'll be honest with you, got to be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. Because when he steps into LSU, it's different now. It's a different place. And their fans and expectations there are huge. And you're not going to – and at Ole Miss, they're not as huge. And you can have a year or two that are 8-9 wins and not worry about your job security. But it won't take very long.
LSU just fired a guy who had been there, the previous 3 years, won 29 games. I mean, he's averaging.
Yeah, and his season wasn't necessarily lousy when he lost when they fired him. He still could have pulled off a decent season. It wasn't going to be what they wanted. But they, like Penn State, they decided that there's only one thing you got to win the SEC or go to the playoffs. And he was heading a different direction. But anyway, that's kind of what Lane wanted. And I really think, I'll be honest with you, and I don't say this because to be critical, but I'll say it because I'm a football coach. I think it's important to Lane to be the highest paid coach in the country. Yeah. I think that's important. And LSU going to make him the highest paid coach in the country. And I don't know if Ole Miss would not have. But I don't think, but they still would have been Ole Miss. In his mind, it still would have been, this was my step in the right direction. This was my stepping stone job. And it lasted longer than he probably thought it would last. But they won. And so they benefited from it. And so hopefully they'll, and then they named their defensive coordinator their head coach, I believe.
Who also worked for Saban.
Yeah, right. Who also worked for Saban. And he'll just have to make sure he gets an offense that can do it, because that's the key in that situation, is that Ole Miss you can't be average on one side of the ball anymore. Oklahoma did a credible job of being okay on offense, but not great. But I don't think it's going to go very far through the playoffs. I don't believe Oklahoma's one-sided football team is going to go very far. But he could be the SEC Coach of the Year, or for what the job that he did do.
Well, and the other thing is, I think it sounded like yesterday that most of the staff, if not all of them, are going to coach through the playoff. And then, Charlie Weiss Jr.
He left.
I think he's going, but
they're going to keep him there.
Looks like he's leaving, but I think he's going to stay through the playoff. Ole Miss was enforcing 200% buyouts, and so I think he's got a 7-figure buyout to leave Ole Miss. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, if LSU is able to, if LSU is going to pony up that kind of money, And I'm guessing they will if they're spending if they're giving Kiffin.
Oh, they are. I would say without a doubt that was decided in the meetings that weren't supposed to be going on.
Yeah,
that was just because I don't think Lane was calling the plays. He's a pretty good offensive coach, but he's obviously watching the game plan sheet. But Charlie Weiss is calling the plays,
yes.
And so he's going to pay whatever he has to pay. That was a part of the negotiations, I would imagine. But I would have thought that if Charlie was going, they would say, go ahead and go now. But I don't know if they can afford to. But I'm just saying is at some point, it's for the same reason that Lane had to move on. If you've taken another job, then you need to move on. But I don't know. I don't know that they've got another guy that can help. Yeah.
I think the AD said yesterday, at least I think I read that he was going to stay, that the whole offensive staff everybody was going to stay through the playoff. And then, it's a tough situation. I'm not opposed to those guys doing it. To me, that would try to help the players. Somewhere along the line, you got to think about the players, mm-hmm.
And I think that would be trying to do the best you can for the players, And I know I learned something from my father very early in my career. When you have a player that's a star, he is so good, he helps your team win. If he gets in a little trouble, and you can punish him without kicking him off the team, when you kick him off the team, and unless he just beyond, he can't be corrected. He can't be saved. You probably hurt your entire team. If it's a mistake, and you could run him stadium steps, and you can punish. You don't need to talk about it publicly, but be careful that you make a decision that will hurt other people on the team when you can publicly punish somebody or make a decision. My dad and we'll get going after this. Maybe Janikowski, the field goal kicker that was a first round draft pick from Poland, he can kick it 50 yards with right or left foot, but and he went first. But he got caught cutting curfew the night before the national championship game in Florida at the Orange Bowl, I think, maybe the night before the night of the game, and the press heard about it, and they said, "Oh, now are you going to punish Dan Janikowski? What are you going to do? Is he going to kick him off the team or make him go home?" And he says, "No." I said, if y'all don't know it, he's Polish. He's under international law. Under international rules, we don't have to do that. And he said, and then that was it. That was his answer. He's under international rule. In other words, we'll take care of that on our own, and we don't need to be getting rid of the best kicker in America when the players loved him anyway. But anyway, that being said, who else is out there? Any other job before we get going? I don't want to keep everybody too long, but any other interesting? Summerall ended up going to Florida.
Summerall went to Florida. Stoops got fired last night.
I saw where Stoops got, and the last two losses were not good, and I don't know that you can recover.
Might make it until Louisville. And
what's that?
I said I thought he might make it until the
until the Louisville game. It was so ugly, and that's an in-state rival, and it was just not they couldn't get past that. And he's got a huge buyout, so he's not, and sometimes it goes that far. It's hard to turn that thing around. You get 2 years that have been pretty south. Then the next year is going to be, it's hard to get guys out of the portal. It's hard to keep guys on your team. It's hard to keep coaches on your staff because they're worried about they better get a job while they can. And so he did a great job there. And so they'll get a change there. Summerall going to Florida. I will say that I thought Summerall would go to Auburn only because I wasn't listening to anybody, but I tried to put 2 and 2 together. From Alabama, wife went to school here. Fits Auburn personality-wise more than at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But and then Lane Kiffin, I said, well, his personality fits Florida. He's got that Spurrier type of personality. Had some ties to Florida, but that's why you almost have to sit and wait and say, we'll see what happens on this thing. So. That'll be interesting. And who else do we got that anybody? And then Arkansas named. We talked about that with Houston. They named Silverfield at Memphis. Looks to be a pretty good hire for them. He beat them, did a good job at Memphis, and it looked to be a good hire. Florida State is retaining that, and having so many family ties to Florida State, that one is just getting uglier and uglier because. Mike Norvell, the losses have been so bad. If you look at his post-game press conferences, it's a defeated man.
Yeah.
It's a defeated personality. It's hard for him to stand up there. Huh?
He looks like Freeze at the end.
Yeah, well, that's what he and Freeze both. And I say this out of respect. Hugh's probably been as relaxed as he's been in a long time because he was sick. He wasn't going well. He really didn't have any answers. And now he can sit back and say it's over and it'll get better. The days will get better as they go, and we'll see how that goes. But at Florida State, they're prolonging the situation. And I can't imagine how fast the players will leave, the assistant coaches will leave, or the school is talking about. And I was going to mention this to Houston. Who picks this GM deal? You got to be careful. Who's running the show? You need to make sure the head coach, he's going to be fired for not winning. He better run the show. He better decide which NIL guys are going for. And there better be people behind the scenes telling him he has enough. But you better stay involved. To me, that's just recruiting. And so everybody's hiring a GM now. And if that guy's just giving the head coach good information, giving him the best possible information, I think that's good. If their school is making decisions for the head coach, you got a disjointed situation that you got to really watch out for, where this guy decides who you're bringing in. This guy decides whether you keep the defensive coaches, or you can't really do that. I don't believe you, and have the loyalty and the type of continuity that you need to have in a coaching staff. That loyalty, as hard as this is to understand, loyalty in a coaching staff is to the head coach. That the guy that hired. It's not to the school. Secondly, to the school, it's to the guy that hired you, because there are different people that run things differently, and you need to be loyal to the coach that hired you and to the style that he wants and the things that he wants done, and that's very, very important.
And people don't realize, when we got to Florida, we had there were two coaches that Spurrier didn't bring with him,
right?
And we had to keep them, whether Ron wanted to or not. We kept most of the, all the recruiting office, trainers, managers, all those things. They stayed in place. We had no control over any of it. And when they fired Ron, they didn't fire anybody else except me. They called me down the hall and they said, "Hey, look, we're firing. Nobody, not an assistant coach, nobody got fired." They called me down the hall and said, "Hey, we're letting you go because you're too loyal to the head coach." I said, "Well, hell, if I'm getting fired being too loyal, I guess that's
what you got to be." Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's what you got to be. But again, but if you got retained by the next guy, you would have been just as loyal to the next guy, because your loyalty goes to the guy that hires you. And I think that's very important. So it'll be interesting how that goes. So anyway, good week of football left. I don't know what time I've lost track of time because we started a little bit. How long have we been on here?
We've been in almost an hour and 20 minutes. We've probably
been a little long. People get tired of hearing us there, but we can pick it up next week because we've got the playoffs, the postseason. We'll see. We'll have more discussions on some of these coaching changes that have been made, and we'll know a little bit more about the Auburn coaching situation, I would imagine, in regard to their staff next time we talk.
No doubt. And thanks to everybody for listening. Click like and subscribe below. It really helps us out.
Thank you now. See you next week.
For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.